Good morning. Today we are reviewing our Unit 2, preparing for the test, practice test on Monday. Real test will be on Tuesday. So let's open up our binders to CO11. That is the beginning of our Unit 2, CO11. On your index card, make sure you label what you're going to put for each objective. So you're going to start off with CO11. And I think writing a definition of equivalent fractions is kind of a key thing to know. So two fractions with the same value. Who remembers how we found those? We multiplied the top and the bottom by the same number. So write that on CO11. So when we get to the test and it says, are these equivalent fractions? And you go, oh, wait a minute, what's an equivalent fraction? You know that you need to multiply or divide the top and bottom by the same number. Remember, that's called our scale factor. That scale factor. So multiplying the top and bottom by the same number, by that same scale factor. Key thing to remember when you're looking at equivalent fractions. So multiply or divide the top and bottom by the same number. Even if you know it right now, I want you to write it on your card, because when it comes time for the test, it's super, super easy to forget. And I will not remind you what equivalent fraction means. So we need to be responsible. Write it on your card. If you weren't finished writing it, you can always go back to the video and finish your card, your help card with the video. That's why we do these videos. So now we have PO12. Write that on your card. I can write a fraction in its simplest form. What does that mean? When I say simplify, 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 what do we have to do, Ava? Divide the top and bottom by the same number until you can't anymore. Sometimes we find that biggest common denominator right away, and we only have to simplify it one time. Sometimes that common denominator, that greatest common factor might be a 12. So we might have divided it by a 2, and then divided it by a 2, and then we still have to divide it by a 3. We have to divide it all the way down. If we knew right away, oh, I can divide both the top and bottom by a 12, then I only divide it once. Sometimes you don't find that greatest common factor, and you have to divide it multiple times. And that's okay, as long as you keep going down as small as you can get. Any questions on that? Remember, on our help cards, we cannot put examples. That's why I'm writing stuff out. We cannot put an example of what it means to simplify, but we can explain what it means to simplify. So keep dividing down. CO13. I can convert between mixed numbers and improper fractions. So we need to know how to go back and forth between the improper and proper. So you're gonna write, oops, CO, CO13. If we want mixed number to improper, you're going to multiply the denominator by the whole number. And then you add the numerator to it. So remember, we multiply the denominator by the whole, and then we add. Marino, why don't you come sit up at the front table, please? To go from improper to mixed, your whole number is how many times you subtract the denominator out of the numerator. Then the new numerator is how many left over. Denominator will stay the same. So I'm going to put this in green because you cannot put examples on your note cards. I just want to refresh our memories of what this means. So if we have a mixed number of 3.5, you're going to multiply 2 times 3 is 6, and then we're going to add 1. So 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7, and that denominator stays the same, 2. So it's the same denominator. Then if we're going from an improper fraction to a mixed number, how many times can I subtract 7 out of 12? 1 time. So that's my full number. I can take 7 away 1 time, and I'm left with 5. So that's my new numerator. Denominator stays the same. Do we remember this? Do you need me to go over any more? Are we good? All right. Again, if you didn't get it all written down, you can watch the video on your own to fill in what you have missed. CO14. I can locate a fraction on a number line and know its value relative to 0, half, and 1. Ooh, remember this one. We have to really think, is it closest to 0? Is your fraction closest to a half? Or is your fraction closest to 1? So you're going to look at that numerator compared to the denominator. So what do you think would be a good thing to write for our help sheet? What would help you when we're looking at this? One thing you always want to do when you're taking the test and you come to the next section is read. It's going to say what that objective is about. So it'll tell you the objective. So that's going to be on the test. I can locate a fraction on a number line and know its value in relation to 0, half, and 1. So we can't put examples on here, but you need to remember to look, is your fraction closest? So if it's closest to a half, remember you may need to see if it's less than or greater than a half. Because sometimes we have two fractions that are close to a half, and we need to know then which one is less and which one is more. So if you have two fractions close to a half, if you have two fractions close to one, always check. Is it smaller than a half or is it bigger than a half? Okay, that's something that we found in the homework. Sometimes if we're ordering 4 different fractions, there might be 2 that are closest to a half, and we need to know, is it just less than a half or is it just more than a half? So that's kind of a big thing to be thinking about when we get to CO14. Can anybody think of something else we might want to put on this objective? I can't really think of anything else to put on this one. All right, next up is PO15. I can compare and order fractions. So when we look at PO15, we need to remember our symbols. So write the less than symbol and write less than. Write the greater than symbol and write greater than. So you remember what symbol you need to use. We always read from left to right. So you always look at that number on the left. Is it less than or greater than the number on the right? You might need to simplify fractions so we can compare them. You might need to relate them to 0, half, and 1. Was there a third one, or is it just those 2? Oh, or equivalent fractions. So look to see which method you're going to use. Which method are you going to use to compare them? Are you going to simplify your 2 fractions? Are you going to find equivalent fractions, or are you going to relate them to 0, half, and 1? You're going to use one of those methods to solve this objective. Madison?
So when you write like a less than greater, when you put the symbols, like the opening is facing the bigger number, right?
Yes, the opening faces the bigger number. So we're always looking at the left to the right. So if the left is less than the right, it means the right number is bigger. And here, that left side, if the opening is trying to gobble it up, that means that's the greater one.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this objective? All right. Let's look at our next one. PO16, I can add and subtract fractions. Big thing to remember are our rules here. So for PO16, you're going to want to write denominators must be the same. So you're going to use that scale factor, those equivalent fractions. So whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. If you have to multiply the bottom by 2 to get a common denominator, you must multiply the numerator by 2. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Remember, after we add or subtract, the denominator stays the same. And what super important thing do we need to remember to do, Zelda? Simplify, simplify, simplify. wrote it 3 times for a reason. It's that important. If you do not simplify, it will be wrong. You must simplify, 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 all the way down as low as you can go. Any questions on this objective? PO 17. Flip my page. PO 17, big thing to remember. So what we wrote on in here, PO 17, was multiply across. What big thing do we remember we have to do at the end? Simplify, simplify, simplify. Always look, can I keep dividing it down? Is there that scale factor I can keep pulling out? Common factors we can keep dividing by. Remember, we multiply across and then simplify. Any questions on this one? PO 18. I can multiply fractions by whole numbers. So for this one, PO 18. Remember we talked about there was that shortcut where we can switch. We have a numerator and a denominator times our whole. Numerator and denominator times the whole. We can change that to being that whole number divided by our denominator, and then we times it by the numerator. So what that looked like was we took that 60 and the 10, we divided the 10 out of the 60. We talked about how we could divide that out, and then we could just multiply across by that numerator. So you want to divide the denominator by, the whole number by the denominator, and then you can multiply by the 3. Or you can put the 1 under your whole number, multiply across, and then simplify. You're always going to simplify by dividing out the denominator. So, or you could say, or multiply across and simplify by dividing out the denominator. That makes sense. So we always have to simplify. If we multiply across, we have to simplify. Easiest way to know what to do is to divide out that denominator. Okay? And our last objective, PO 19. We are dividing fractions. So PO 19, dividing those fractions. We can convert to multiplying, which means we can flip divide to multiply and flip second fraction to its reciprocal, multiply across, and then simplify. So if we're converting to multiplication, we flip dividing to multiplying, flip the second fraction to its reciprocal, we multiply across, and we simplify. Liam,
On the test, do we have to do both, or can we
you
just do
pick one.
Okay.
You'll only have to do one of the methods. Some of us like one over the other. It doesn't matter which method you use, you get the same answer. Okay, I teach both, so that way you can figure out which one works for you. Cross multiplication, multiply the first fraction's numerator. So the first numerator by the second denominator. And the first denominator by the second numerator. And then you simplify. So what that looks like is that and that. If we don't put numbers in there, it's not an example. Any questions on this one? Okay, so it is your responsibility to make sure that you have your help sheet. Oh, I'm talking and I'm recording. Please don't move your chairs. It's your responsibility to make sure you have your help sheet ready, that you study over the weekend, and you're prepared for the practice test on Monday, real test on Tuesday. Yes, Halloween is on Tuesday, so we're doing the test in the morning before we get into any Halloween fun. So that way, on Wednesday, after we've had all of our Halloween fun and we're tired, we don't have to think about taking a math test. If you're watching this at home, I hope you are well. Excuse me. I'm still talking. Please stop moving. That's very distracting on the recording. You are at home. We hope you are well. We hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.